In this video, we'll learn how to clone paint in MARI using the clone stamp. Okay, so I've hidden most of the asset with the exception of the dagger. We're actually going to be working on the dirt and scratches layer here inside the metal detail group for our diffuse channel. And you can see as of right now, the dagger has actually got very little color detail other than base colors for kind of the handle, the hilt, and the blade here. If I come in and hide the lighting and just look at flat color, you can see I have painted in a little soot or dirt on top of that very quickly, but that's really about it. Most of the detail here for the dagger is actually being created through the roughness map, which is absolutely okay. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about a tool that you may have heard of before. If you've used applications like Photoshop, you may have heard of the clone stamp. Now, the clone stamp, while what it can accomplish is very similar or comparable to what you can accomplish with a clone stamp in Photoshop, the method for using it is going to be different because this is MARI. So let me go ahead and show you how this works. We're going to jump over here inside of our toolbar, and let's go ahead and grab this tool right here. This is going to be your clone stamp. Now, you'll notice here that with the clone stamp tool active, I now have two little circles. One of those is static here, and one of them is moving around with my cursor. Entirely normal. So what we basically do with this tool is we specify a source area. In this case, I've specified that right here. And then we can paint and clone from that source. Now, it just so happens right now there's nothing there at that source area that I've set to sample from. I would have to actually move something down into there. But we can change that source area at any point. Let me just jump back into flat lighting, and I'll just sample right here. Now, watch what happens. If I control-click on that little blob right there, I can come over here to the left, and I can start to paint a clone of it, just as you might expect. Very, very similar to this tool in other applications. So again, this is the clone stamp, and it uses MARI's brush engine. So you can see we have some options up here available to us in terms of pressure sensitivity. We can also select any of the brushes to use with the clone stamp inside of our shelf tabs here. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and clear my paint buffer with a Control-Shift-C, and I'm going to quickly switch to my paintbrush tool, and I've selected a red color. I'm just going to paint in a red dot right there. Now watch what happens when I switch back over here to the clone stamp. And let's say I just sampled this as my source area, and I wanted to start painting right about here. But I get over to here, and you'll notice that I'm also able to clone information that is not only baked in terms of this black blob, but this red circle right here is not baked. So right now we have paint that's in the buffer as a result of our cloning actions, but my source for the clone stamp is currently set and by default set to the current paint target. So thinking about the current paint target, we've talked about this in previous videos. Current paint target, it means whatever you currently have selected in terms of your layer stack, whether it be a mask, whether it be a paint layer, whatever the case may be. In this case, it's this dirt scratches. But know also that current paint target will also pull from the paint buffer. So what happens if I just wanted to pull or clone from paint that's in my paint buffer? I'll put another little red dot right there, and we'll put it on top of that blob. And I'm going to jump back over and grab my clone stamp. If we can come up here to the source drop down, and this is going to look a little scary at first, and we'll talk about this here in a moment. Don't pay attention to these options down here. At the very, very top, you'll have current paint target, and then you'll have one right below that called painting. There we go. So now if I came in here and set my clone target to right there, and I came in here and started to clone, you'll see here that I'm no longer cloning the baked paint. I'm only cloning that red circle. So basically, by setting the source to painting rather than current paint target, we're able to just target what is in the paint buffer for cloning purposes. So a little different way of using the clone stamp there. There's actually a third one here that I wanted to demonstrate as well. So if we drop this down, there's one called image. Now, image can be set manually, or we can actually set this a little differently. I'm going to set back to current paint target. And I want to jump over to my image manager here with my clone stamp selected. And I'm just going to drag in this metal image right here. Now we did this in an earlier video, and it actually opened up, or rather switched to the paint through tool. With the clone stamp, that's not the case. You can see this opened up very, very large, simply because this image is very, very large. So I'll just go ahead and shrink the window down, and then we'll go ahead and zoom out on the image a bit here. So what happens is, by doing that, we've opened this image in a separate window. And you can see, again, that image is very, very large. So what we can do with this in a separate window like this, you'll also notice my source has been changed from current paint target. It's now set to image. So what I can do now is I can come in and clone from this image to my paint buffer. Again, same way, simply by control clicking on the image and then painting into the paint buffer. So you can see there is that image detail that we're pulling and into our paint buffer through the clone stamp tool. So again, a pretty interesting way of using this, being able to clone right from an image to the paint buffer. But really the clone stamp provides a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to use it. Now I am going to go ahead and close out of this image window, and we'll go ahead and clear out my paint buffer for right now, because I want to talk to you a little bit about all of these other options here. So what you see represented here is basically a list of all potential current paint targets in my project. So you'll see they start here with the object, and it's always going to be assassin because we just have one object in this project. Then the next entry here is for the channel. So you can see there's my AO, my ambient occlusion. My diffuse has quite a few here. I have a displacement channel, a normal channel, a roughness channel, and we can use our scroll wheel to scroll through these. So what we could actually do here is come over to, say, well, let's just come into maybe the roughness. And maybe we wanted to look for that roughness information that was painted for the blade. So if we come into roughness, we're going to look for sort of that breadcrumb trail here. We have metal detail, which is probably it, painted detail, and then paint. I'm betting this is the layer. So let's go ahead and select this. And you can see that appears as our source. So now I should be able to come in here, control click, and begin to clone directly from that layer that exists in a completely different channel right here into the paint buffer for my diffuse layer. So again, you can see all of that roughness map information that I've painted. Pretty interesting way to clone from any potential source inside your project. All right, so this is the clone stamp tool, another tool in your arsenal when painting textures here inside of MARI.